Hi and welcome to this special video where I try to fit all these items into one frame. As the title of this video suggests, this is $4,000 of 4K gaming equipment. Now I don't have that kind of money, but you know who does? Cherry. Today. Now he set me on a quest to hunt down each of these items. And I was stupid enough to say I could potentially put this PC together. But in this video I will show you what $4,000 of gaming equipment gets you.
In order to make this a sick 4K PC, we just need to have a few items. Most of these items I did not choose personally, but some of them I did, as I will tell you along the way. The first one is this overly huge true 4K monitor. This is a Gigabyte Aorus F132U. It comes packed with a slur of cables to suit your need. Since Cherry isn't going to use a face-on mount to lift the monitor up in the air, I removed the 4 screws for the mount. I clicked in the base mount, and with a combined total weight of 15 kilograms, this is one heavy beast. Next up is a desktop case, which is an NZXT H510, a mid-ATX case, which I chose based on its clean looks and easy build possibilities. Since some of the other items have RGB capabilities, I thought it would be nice to have it displayed through a glass window. Now the real star of the show is tucked inside this simple carton box. I reckon it came in this bland box for a reason. We are looking at a Asus TUF GeForce RTX 3080 Ti 12GB OC version. Simply put, it is the most expensive part of this build. And I had never seen these newer bad boy GPUs up close in real life. If I want to power such a power-sucking GPU and more, I need a strong power supply unit. Enter the CORSAIR RM850, a modular ATX PSU, which will supply enough power to all the peripherals in this build. Here's the second star of the show. This, ladies and gents, is an AMD RYZEN 9 5900X. There's only a CPU in the box, but that's all I need, because I won't be needing some cheap stock cooler to cool this baby down. That's what this chunky beast is for. This is a CORSAIR H100X, a dual fan, all-in-one water cooling unit, which will fit nicely in the front, upwards in the case, and will apply frost on its CPU. Since you want to build a sick desktop, you cannot not have RGB lighting. These are G.Skill Trident Z F4 3600 C18D 32GB RAM modules, which is a mouthful. To store all the data, I have this Samsung 980 Pro 1TB PCIe 4.0 M2 SSD. Actually, most of it will be games, come to think of it. Now all this stuff needs to be placed in something. Well, this is a MSI MAG X5705 Torpedo Max Gaming Mainboard ATX, again with the long product names. It also has some minor RGB lighting and some extensive ports on its I/O backplate. The final product is the smallest of the bunch, and it's this GPU holder. The GPU itself is mega heavy, and in order to support it, next to it being screwed down into the motherboard from falling down, this GPU holder carries some of the weight. I open up the case on both sides, so I have all the room and space to work comfortably. This is a desktop case that already has a clean cable management mindset, which is a plus in my book. Now there are a few ways to build a brand new desktop. You can click in the peripherals first on a flat surface, or you can do it like I'm doing here, which is placing the motherboard directly into the case and work from the inside. Screwing down this motherboard was annoying. NZXT, the case manufacturer, added screws for this, but these screws are fabricated with a narrow screw thread, which makes it hard to just screw them in. Once that's fitted, I placed in the RAM modules. Note, I will be adjusting these later on. Then I place in the RYZEN CPU, just click it in and close it tight with the handle. This motherboard has 2 M2 slots, and I first went for the so-called cooled slot, which should provide some cooling mechanism while it's in use. Now here's the thing, MSI, the motherboard manufacturer, didn't add an easy way to clamp down M2 SSD, seeing that the M2 should be clamped down well enough, even with the cooling plate. I left it how it is. Note, I will adjust this again later on. Time to install the next gen GPU. I removed 2 backplates to make room for the GPU. I tried to place in the GPU, but I thought it would fit in the 2 upper plates. Turns out, it fits, but just 1 backplate down. While I screw it down, I hold the GPU just in case. I don't want this heavy beast falling out and breaking off that PCI port because of its weight. And to counterbalance that weight is where the GPU riser comes in. This one has a magnet on the bottom, so it won't move around that easily, and an adjustable screw to find the correct fitting. As you can see, it supports the weight of the GPU and gives some reassurance. I line up the power supply unit and place in its 4 screws. I also place back that back plate that I wrongly removed and close up the rest. Then I rip away the safety plastics from the GPU. Personally, I like how NZXT has these power and audio cables tucked away. Back in the days, these were just spread out in the case and you had to manage all of it yourself. Now this case has multiple approaches to work in, manage and hide cables. Most of these basic cables for power and audio need to be placed on the bottom of the motherboard, so I bring them in from below and connect them. Although I'm filming this in broad daylight, working in such a case with narrow space can make it dark, so I grab my flashlight to find these tiny connection points. Now this was a cable I had never seen. This is simply put a unified cable to connect all the USB ports from the case into the power inlet of the motherboard. It's time to do cable management with the supplied power and connection cables from the PSU. Now one could detach the PSU and have enough room to work with. I did not. It is a bit of a narrow place to work in, but I just like the fact that everything is in there already. If it was a micro ATX case, I would have definitely bust out a PSU for easier access. I connect the power cable to the motherboard via this handy insert through the back of the case. Here's the first adjustment. I separate the RAM modules so they now work in dual channel mode in the correct slots. I also connect the power for the GPU and pass through the cable towards the back to the PSU, where I connect the other end. While I click in the CPU power cable on the motherboard, I pass through the rest of it via the top, coming out the other end and also connected to the PSU. Now it's time to do some cable management. While NZXT has done a fine job of lining up cables and making prefabbed holes, I still need to make it as nice, tight and compact as possible. I will be revising much of this later on though, as I need to make some changes along the way in order to place in those dual blade fans and the CPU cooler. This panel has to be removed. Now I had to do this a few times to get the correct results, but this is how you actually set it up. The plate needs to come in between, saying sandwiched between the fans and the radiator to fit in the case. Before placing it in, I direct the power cables through the sides towards the back so I can manage those later on, and I click in the plate as well as screw it down. Those power cables for the CPU cooler that I ran from the back are well hidden behind this white bracket as I place them in. The CPU cooler came in pre-installed with this Intel bracket, but since I have an AMD CPU, I have to replace them for the AMD ones. I first let the top hang on its clip, then slowly adjust the screws by tightening them from top to bottom, and vice versa until they are tight enough. Another thing that was new to me is that the CPU cooler needs to be powered by a SATA connection for its main power, while the fan has the standard fan connection for the motherboard. I push the SATA connector to the back and pick it up at the other end, where a SATA power cable connects it, which will eventually go back inside the PSU. And here's another round of cable management. I like to do this after every step, so I can adjust on the fly and have a clear sense of which cable is which. You can also choose another method, like doing cable management at the end, but that would be just a guessing game for me. I peel off the CPU sticker and it's shiny, which ends this build. This is the final result. I adjusted a few things along the way, like the RAM modules, but mainly cable management. Time to peel off that huge sticker from the glass panel, so we can all be voyeurs and have a peek inside while gaming. But the main question is, will this machine power up? I like how this case looks. It's very sci-fi looking, with its black and white aesthetic and subtle RGB lighting. It's not over the top, and it's clean from cluttered cables. Now let's connect it to the monitor. I use the supplied DisplayPort cable to get the feed. The monitor itself has a swivel function, so inserting the cable is made easy. I power it on, and it takes its sweet time. The BIOS is being displayed, which is always a good sign. Temperatures are in the correct values, and everything is being recognized. Well, not all of it. The SSD isn't, so I open up the case and try something different. I place the SSD in the M2 slot below the graphics card. This one isn't cooled, but I can fix this one tight to the motherboard much easier. Thing is, I had to salvage the proprietary screw from the cooling plate. MSI did not include this weird specific screw with the motherboard, which is a total letdown. But at least it's being recognized now. And now, I am going to show you some test footage of how this machine runs. First up is Gravity Mark, which is a GPU stress test that you can maximize and minimize to your heart's extent. A side note, the following tests have been shot with my camera at 25 frames per second, while the tests will show you higher frames. Point is, my camera cannot capture the extreme frames these tests are going to show you, but will be shown on screen. All of these tests have been rendered at 4K with the absolute maximum in adjustable settings. Another GPU and CPU test that I like are the 3D Mark tests. These are visually more attractive, but once again, as this footage is capped at 25 frames per second, the actual frame rate laying between 150 to 280 frames per second cannot be fully captured. So in real life, this footage was almost 10 times more fluent and faster, especially considering this IPS monitor has 144 Hz to display it all. And there you have it. This is what you get if you empty $4,000 out of your pocket. A gigantic, hardcore power beast of a machine that can run every modern game in 4K at superb frame rates and refresh speeds. But you'll also be broke afterwards. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked all that you've seen here, I think it would be awesome if you give it a like. And if you are in the mood for it and want to see more future projects, a subscribe would even be better. And I'll catch you on a next future project.